When you work in education leadership, you don't get off at 5 o'clock. Your mind is always on the clock, thinking of ways to solve problems for your students, parents, and teachers. On the Clock is your go-to podcast to learn valuable insights from education leaders across the United States. I'm your host, Todd Dallas Lamb, former White House appointee to the U.S. Department of Education, and we are now on the clock. Welcome back to On the Clock. I am your host, Todd Dallas Lamb, and today my guest is Dr. John Kraft, who is the Superintendent of Schools at Northside ISD. Dr. Kraft, thank you so much for being on the show. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, thank you, Todd, for having me. I'm really excited for the opportunity to kind of speak about what's going on in San Antonio throughout the state of Texas and my perspective on education and how we're transforming the provisions of education, particularly across the state of Texas.
Well, I want to dive into that. Normally, that's exactly how we would start the show, but I'm super mindful that as we tape today's show, we are doing so at a time, the week of the tragedy on the Guadalupe River and the flooding that took place. And Dr. Kraft, you're not too far from that area, are you?
No, Todd, we're about 40 miles to the southeast, and like I say, many of the communities and school districts are in our regional service provider area, Region 20, and so it's hit pretty close to home. We have families both here in the district, but also really close neighbors that have all been impacted, and unfortunately, it's just a very, very tragic, devastating event, and a lot of thoughts and prayers, I think, need to be with the families, particularly as we're trying to provide support during a very trying time. The recovery effort is well underway. I do believe that the resources that are being provided are being effective, but it is going to be a very long recovery process.
This is a story that has really touched the entire nation because I think we can all relate in some ways to dropping your kid off for summer camp. What a tradition that is, family to family. That piece of the story has really resonated and affected people emotionally across the country. But also just this is the time of the year when people do really fun things like camping and to have this wave of water, create such tragedy. And with the loss of life continues to go up every morning when I wake up and when I check the news in the evening. Well, it seems to me that your schools are probably a resource for all manner of folks who have been displaced. I mean, you're getting kind of back to the original concept of a school as a resource to the community, isn't it?
No, absolutely, and that's the great thing about the collegial power of superintendents, not only here in Region 20 and South Central Texas, but really across the state of Texas. Is in the times of tragedy, Uvalde is another great example. We pull together. We will provide counseling, crisis counseling, grief counseling. We've got counselors in various communities to include Kerrville as we speak, and also communities that weren't necessarily directly impacted by the flood itself, but had family members that were engaged, involved. And so, like I say, through the leadership of Region 20, we work together collaboratively. Many of our counselors that are trained in this specific area, they're on summer break. They're not on contract, and they have willingly volunteered, tell us where we need to be. And so they're deployed and they're working within communities as we speak. And like I say, it is going to be, unfortunately, a very long recovery process, not only from the physical damage, but just the grief that has stricken these communities. And that's the great thing about, like I say, being a larger school district here in the state. We have the ability to help those in need in these small communities, to include Kerrville, to include Comfort. They are desperately in a time of need.
Well, I can tell you that we're all across this country. We're all Texans this week, as long as it takes to allow the healing process to take place. And thank you for all you're doing. And our heart goes out to your community and the people across the state of Texas. It feels like I've been on 2 or 3 calls this week where people have known somebody that was affected. It really has resonated, and I've always made the observation about Texans that I've met, whether I met them in Washington, D.C. I live in Annapolis, Maryland, and we've sponsored a bunch of football players who were from Texas. And every Texan who travels around the country has sort of one goal, whether they're living outside the state for a while or just visiting. They want to get back to Texas, don't they? It's an amazing thing about Texans. And when you talk about the community that's rallying around right now during this tragedy, I could hardly think of a state better prepared for people that are used to growing up with pickup trucks and chainsaws and having a feeling of community because Texans are a special breed of cat, aren't they?
We are, and I can say this, having been in Texas all my life, of course, now seventh generation Texan. Um, we it's ingrained, Todd, to your point, and the sense of community and the sense of support and the sense of pulling ourselves up by our bootstraps and completing a mission, whatever that may be, and however difficult that may be. It's just an ingrained sense of community support if and when the time arises. And this is definitely one of those times that we've got to all collectively come together, support one another in a variety of measures and means. And I have no doubt the time heals all wounds. The communities that have been directly impacted and those that have been indirectly impacted by a loss of a family member or loved one will recover. But it is going to be a long recovery process, I'm afraid.
One of the things, whether you lived through 9/11 as I did in my professional life, uh, you start to slowly hear the stories of inspiration and courage and resiliency and, led, I think, this week by a diver who has saved over 130 people in the hours of that in the aftermath of that flood. And you think about all the people that do jobs in this country and how many people have you saved? How many lives have you saved?
Right.
What an incredible inspiration that person is. And he's giving all the credit to the young people that he was, how courageous they were in that moment.
Well, and that's just it. This is a time of tragedy when it's not about egos and it's not about accomplishments. And I can venture to say that this young man was absolutely heroic in that time. And I will say this that there are also a lot of other unsung heroes that also jumped in as the situation was unveiling, and but then also directly there afterwards. And that's what makes, I believe, this place so special. When danger presents itself, which it obviously has in this tragic situation, more people run towards that danger in the effort to help a brother or a sister in need rather than retreat. And that's what makes Texas, I will argue, the special place to live, reside, educate our children more so than anything else.
So let's pivot a little bit. I still want to talk about the culture in Texas, but through the prism of your school district. You said you're a seventh generation Texan. I'm guessing you've got some understanding of the very first Texan that moved. Where did they come from that started your family lineage in Texas?
Yeah, that's a great question. So my family primarily transitioned from the Northeast, Kraft obviously being a German heritage, direct descendants from the Alamo or the Priest and Sutherland families. There is a long history of establishment thereafter, just outside of Jacksboro, Texas. In fact, still have a lot of relatives that live in that area, which is towards West Texas. Four Sixes Ranch, if you're familiar with that area. And so it's one of those situations, Todd, that as the family evolved and brothers and sisters married. In fact, I have a family heritage where, believe it or not, in the early years of the state, three brothers married three sisters, just as a result of the lack of population.
Yep.
Like say Rogers and Sutherland family, and it evolved from there. So it's quite interesting, really. But Northeast, then directly from Mississippi as well as Oklahoma. And like I say, as the state grew and evolved and developed, so did the Kraft family.
You mentioned your German heritage. When you think about Texas, you think about barbecue, and it was the Germans who took the practice of smoking meat down to Texas, down through the South, um, uh, and created a lot of that barbecue culture that you see in Texas.
Yeah, so we call it brisket.
Yeah, I
Uh,
just made one.
yeah, so it is. It's pretty special. We take great pride in in our smoked brisket. Barbecue tends to I equate barbecue more with barbecue sauce, but
Yeah,
a really good brisket. You don't put
that
barbecue sauce on
that's right.
a good
That's
brisket.
exactly right. You started in football. Did you play football in high school, college?
I did. Yes, yes, sir. I was a graduate of Boswell High School, which is Eagle Mountain Saginaw ISD. At that time, it was just one high school town. Now they're actually in the process of opening number five, which is hard to believe. But
Wow.
again, kind of just an indication of the growth. Had the opportunity to play 4 years of varsity football, and actually was quarterback and free safety and linebacker. Played actually both sides of the ball, and so you know that, along with being a five sport athlete, really taught me a whole lot about teamwork, and it taught me about hard work, and it taught me about overcoming um, real extreme odds that I believe in being a coach that athletics and extracurricular activities, that's the opportunity that's provided really outside the classroom walls that teaches us lessons that will carry us forward in particularly leadership positions, but life forever. And so I forever, like I say, cherish my days as a student athlete, but then also having the opportunity to coach, start my career in education as a coach and biology teacher, because it really did. It taught me a lot of life lessons.
There's a lot of ways to become a superintendent. The traditional arc is teacher, principal, chief academic officers tend to find their way into your role. I love the fact that you've got a background as a football coach, football player. You were a leader as a quarterback. Every quarterback is basically a leader on the team, and leadership is really as I observe what you do as a superintendent. Leadership, you could put all the words that might describe what you do, but leadership really has to be at the top, doesn't it?
It absolutely does. And when you talk about adverse situations, that's where I believe leadership shines. You're placed in positions that you're having to face odds, and whether it be in competition on the field or on a track or on a court, but also just in life, and how you again work to create support around a team. These are lessons that, like I say, you learn outside of the classroom in most cases. Same thing is true with individuals that are involved in band and choir, and it just these leadership traits and qualities are irreplaceable, and so important even in today's generation of learners.
I sent my both sons, to a little elementary school here in Annapolis, which is a K through 5 school that had a boundary around it where most people walked their kids to school, and then at 3 o'clock, they'd come a little early, cup of coffee in their hand, hanging out with parents, talking to some of the teachers as they were dismissing students. Some of the students would stay. The parents would kind of gather around for maybe 30 minutes, even letting their kids run around. Again, continuing to talk to the principal, the teachers. And then the school was widely considered the best school in our community, K through 5. But I always thought it was the secret to that sauce was all those parents being so engaged in a really positive way within the school itself. And I think in a broader sense, you could say the same thing. I think when I've toured schools in Texas, you really get a sense of community, and part of the way that that community builds itself is an identity around those Friday night light football games that we've all seen on in movies and on TV. Talk about the culture and how many positives come from a football program, sports program. Baseball is a big deal in Texas. I've seen that firsthand. How the community really, even if your kid doesn't play, will go to those games, and how does that sort of feed into more positives down the line?
Well, yeah, I think that's a great point. And the one thing that I've learned in my 17 years now, as a superintendent is that sense of community and that discourse that you just described within all levels of schooling, whether it be elementary, middle, or high school, is so important. In fact, a great measure of academic performance and success within a school is really a result of how engaged that particular community, that neighborhood, those surrounding areas are engaged in the entire learning process. And, we're large enough with 12 high schools that we play Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And so it's a grand stage. And it's not just the student athletes that are competing on the field, it's also the student trainers that are helping with the athletic needs of that night, the bands, the choir that sings the national anthem to right before kickoff, our cheerleaders, our dance teams, and so that sense of pride and that sense of community, and really, like I say, community engagement is really a key piece to the formula for overall success. I'll argue that the students that are involved in those types of activities and in extracurricular activities in general are also our highest performers in the classroom. And they're also developing, like I say, the leadership skills and skills that are learned through those activities that are, like I say, going to be their platform for success later on in life. And so it is. It's an overall effort. I've made the comment so many times that we have great teachers here in Northside. We're very, very fortunate. But the first and foremost teacher of every student that we have the opportunity to serve are their parents or their grandparents or that individual that has played such a huge role in raising them and instilling values that has set them up for success as they enter pre-kindergarten and kindergarten. And so that engagement, that level of involvement is so critical to the overall success of the child's education career.
One of the things I'm jealous of my kids was the ability for my son to play soccer, and then they had student-led televising of the game, student announcers, student statisticians, student producers like Tony on my show. I would have loved I did do it. I just did it from the bleachers, announcing a football game, but I
And
to think that I could be able to do that now and really it really does set up so many different types of career options, which is really what you're in the business of doing is creating an environment that produces some pathways to careers and what a great array of options you get just from a football game where you don't even have to put the pads on.
yeah, that's exactly right. We're very fortunate to have one of our magnet programs here in Northside as a communication arts program. And we just installed some rather large video boards at both of our stadiums in which we'll be engaging students in that overall event production. And it's really, really just a great experience because there are so many careers in this field, particularly in sports and entertainment, that provide those pathways for students to gain really hands-on learning opportunities that only they just catapult them into their future careers if that's an area of interest. And I've had the opportunity, like I say, to launch these programs in a couple of districts now, and they provide, like I say, just that the catalyst to students not only learning that they really enjoy it and have a passion for it, but then also skill sets that they wouldn't learn otherwise, probably until they graduate with a degree or begin a job in the workforce and attaining. And so they're really getting a head start on those career pathways, and we take great pride in that with a lot of our magnet programs.
That is awesome. As we get ready for the school year, what initiatives are you excited about rolling out this next fall?
Yeah, so it's we're really excited about the school year. We're going to be opening a brand new early college high school, and the intent for the early college high school, similar to a lot of the STEM related fields, is to provide students the opportunity to attain basically an associate's degree upon graduation. And it's a tremendous partnership with Alamo Colleges, which is our local community college here in the San Antonio region, particularly Northwest Vista College. Their president, Amy Bosley, has been a great partner. And so we're going to be expanding dual credit opportunities through an early college high school program, which we have across all of our high schools and magnet programs already. But this is going to be a very, very intentional focus on students attaining that associate's degree. Along with that, we've also, talking about that partnership, engaged with St. Mary's College, which has agreed to help pay for tuition and fees for our teachers who may not have master's degree that are specific in a core discipline to attain those master's degree to only expand dual credit opportunities for students while they're in high school. My two children have had the opportunity to engage both in advanced placement as well as dual credit opportunities. And it's just a tremendous, tremendous advantage. When you look at the cost of higher education, to be able to attain and transfer 18 to 30 hours in an associate's degree case, 60 hours to a university, it's just a tremendous benefit to the family and a great head start for the students.
We talk about education and we talk about the neediest kids, and we should have those conversations, and they should be at the forefront of what we do as educators. But I love the notion that you've got some kids out there that want to do more, that can do more. You feed them that opportunity, and as you say, as a parent who's paid a fair amount of money in tuition, what a great savings for those lucky families that get to be a part of that program and get their kid ahead with basically a free 2 years of college.
Right. Yeah. I mean, it's just like I say, it's a win-win. It's also a win for institutions of higher education, i.e., community colleges. And we've also got a great partnership with UTSA, which is the university right here in our backyard. It's increasing their enrollment, and so it's really. And I always look for win-win situations, but it's a win for our families. It's a win for the school district. It's a win for, like I say, higher education partners, and like I say, we're going to be aggressively and very intentionally expanding those programs going into this school year. So we're pretty excited to be able to, like I say, forge these pathways, increase these pathways for more students to attain degrees that are interested in doing so.
Our guest today, Dr. John Kraft from Northside ISD. I want to let you know that we're going to be trying to rapidly put this podcast up. We'd like to work with your team and maybe get a link or two to some opportunities for our listeners to send donations to a good local cause on behalf of the families and victims of the flooding this week. And I just want to thank you for your time during a week when I'm sure you're a lot more busy than you thought you would be.
Well, thank you, Todd. And like I say, it's been a pleasure to spend some time with you. Yeah, just again, thoughts and prayers, please, to those that have been directly impacted by this really just surreal tragedy. Like I say, the communities, the state, we will recover, but we're just going to have to pull together, and it's going to have to be that overall team effort. And there will be brighter days ahead, particularly for South Central Texas.
From your lips to God's ears, thank you so much for being on the show. Tony Abair is the producer of this show. We always like to thank him. And thank you again, John, for being on the show.
Thanks, Todd. Great to visit with you.